Well, the Quran also mentions a story in which Jesus makes real birds, living birds, out of clay birds. And he does this by breathing into those clay birds and giving them life. Of course, the Quran adds, with the permission of Allah. But why exactly does Jesus give life? Why does Jesus resurrect people, and why does he give new life to inanimate beings, to clay birds? This story is found in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, and it seems that the Quran adopted this story from that Gospel or from people who held the same beliefs and had those stories on their minds. The issue is, again, in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, this story is explained within context when talking about the childhood of Jesus, because Jesus is considered an extraordinary being. He is God, he is divine, he can do amazing things. And he can, because he is God, bring people back to life and give life to things that don't have life. So according to those legends, like in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, it makes sense for Jesus to give life to clay birds, because it's a later legendary text which explains how Jesus was divine, a god, even in his childhood. It doesn't make sense for Islam to include such a story. The idea of breathing life into beings is reserved for God. Another question.
Okay, so we just saw that video clip where Apostate Prophet says that the Quran copies off the infancy Gospel of Thomas, or the Syriac infancy Gospel of Thomas. Now I'm just going to be refuting this part of his video. This clip is part of a video where he says that Islam got Jesus wrong, and this has already been refuted over the years. A lot of these claims that he brings up have already been refuted by Shabir Ali, etc., by other Muslim apologists, so he's not bringing anything new to the table. For example, he talks about the crucifixion of Jesus. That's been refuted. The Quran does not say somebody else was crucified instead of Jesus. The Quran is denying Jesus' death on the cross. So according to the Quran, Jesus was crucified, but he wasn't killed on the cross. And that makes sense because if you read the Gospels, nothing killed Jesus on the cross. The spearing story in the Gospel of John is a later fabrication. It wasn't to be taken literal. But anyways, I'm not going to be talking about everything he talks about in that video. I just want to refute this particular or the specific point that he brings up. Now, a puss or a pussy commits a fallacy. He commits the genetic fallacy and the post ergo propter hoc fallacy. So what is the genetic fallacy? It's a fallacy where you're attacking the source of the claim instead of the claim itself. What is the post ergo propter hoc fallacy? It's a fallacy that says the thing before caused the thing after, so these are fallacious arguments. According to even Christian scholars themselves, there are true stories found in these New Testament apocryphal sources, or these apocryphal gospels, and that the Quran is doing is confirming that there were true stories found in the New Testament apocryphal gospels. See the Oxford Bible Commentary, page 1307, and Craig L. Blomberg, The Historical Reliability of the Gospels, pages 279 to 280. So even Christian scholars, New Testament and Christian scholars, conservative scholars agree or say that the New Testament apocryphal Gospels, after the New Testament and before the Quran, do contain true stories about Jesus. So even Christian scholars and New Testament scholars are admitting this. So when the Quran is repeating these stories found in these New Testament apocryphal Gospels, all it means is that these Gospels do contain true stories about Jesus, and the Quran is confirming them. So even Christian scholars themselves admit that the New Testament apocrypha Gospels do contain true stories about Jesus. Thus, the Quran could be confirming those true stories. Thus, the Quran could be repeating true stories found in these New Testament apocryphal sources. There's nothing unbelievable about that. So what about the miracle of Jesus bringing a clay bird back to life? Apostate or a pussy says, what's the point of that miracle? Well, atheists and Christians cannot deny this as they don't have all the facts about Jesus. As John chapter 21 verse 25 states, that not everything was recorded about Jesus. So according to the canonical New Testament Gospel of John, not everything about Jesus made it into the New Testament canon. So there could be true stories about Jesus that found its way into the New Testament apocryphal works, as according to the Gospel of John chapter 21 verse 25, not everything was recorded about Jesus. So, Jesus did many things, and the author of the Gospel of John says all those things Jesus did couldn't be recorded. So it could be that Jesus made a clay bird, but for some reason it wasn't recorded in the New Testament, but it was recorded in these New Testament apocryphal Gospels. That's certainly possible. That can't be disproven. As for the resurrection miracle of Jesus, or Jesus making a clay bird, etc., well, this is not a unique miracle. Apos says, what's the point of this miracle? Well, this is not a unique miracle. Other Old Testament figures, or other biblical figures, were able to resurrect people. For example, Elijah, who was an Old Testament prophet, resurrected a dead child in 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 17 to 24. God used Elijah and Jesus to do resurrection miracles, or giving life to dead material. So that is a miracle. That is a miracle God allowed to both Elijah and Jesus. So if you read, the Quran and the New Testament and the Old Testament books, Jesus did many miracles that other Old Testament figures did. For example, Jesus resurrected dead and gave life to dead material. Same thing with Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 17 verses 17 to 24, etc. So in conclusion, Apus, or a pussy, fails to do logic and reasoning. He fails to understand that he's committing logical fallacies. And he fails to do any kind of research on the New Testament or the Bible or New Testament apocryphal works, or what New Testament scholars say about New Testament apocryphal works. Apus just fails. He just fails in logic, reasoning, and research. Hell, I know high schoolers who can do logic and reasoning better than Apus. High schoolers, that's right. 18 or 17-year-old high schoolers are more reasonable and more logical than Apus. Ain't that just sad? Because Apus is like a 40-year-old man. But anyways, this is just, in conclusion, the Quran doesn't copy any false story about Jesus. And another problem with that thing is that Apus, any critic of Islam who uses that argument is committing the genetic fallacy, and they're being inconsistent, because the Bible itself, both the Old Testament and New Testament, quote from apocryphal sources, and the New Testament, or the Gospel of John, admits that not everything made it about Jesus in the New Testament. So it's certain that some stories of Jesus could by word of mouth, could have made it into the 2nd or 3rd century apocryphal books. True stories about Jesus could have made it into 2nd and 3rd century books, and the Quran is confirming that there are true stories found in those New Testament apocryphal books. No one can disprove this, so this is not a threat to the validity of the Quran. So Apus fails yet again.